Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Power 98.5 for Resilient You with Alicia Pozsony. We talk about all things resilience, and today we have a very special guest. We have Urban Scholar with us.
Yes.
Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Joseph Spencer.
Our listeners are from all demographics. I have had guests on this show talk about their personal stories of how they get by in the world and how, the world today or when they were growing up. They talk about their aspirations, where they want to go. So it's really, and maybe I'll start. So if I'm not mistaken, we went to school together years ago
Yes.
in the city of New Brunswick.
I believe it was Roosevelt.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was
Yes,
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt Elementary School. Right.
Yes.
And, it's so interesting because, I'm so glad to connect with you. And I know I first reconnected with you, I think, only like 5 years ago online.
Yes.
When you were so profound, but again, why don't you tell our listeners whatever you want to start with, we can start there.
All right. A little background about myself. I graduated high school, obviously back in 1990 from New Brunswick. I actually wanted to be a computer programmer. I had kind of made that decision in like 10th grade, and I went to DeVry at the time, which was a technical school, and like fresh out of high school, and it was a nightmare. So I ended up hating like computers, and I quit the program. So, and I had made a strong resolve to never go into higher education ever again because it was a really bad experience, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. Fast forward, like a year or so after that, I ran into this man, and he told me he was doing some hiring, and it was being a mentor. Long story short, I took the job, and I haven't stopped since. That was in 1994, I want to say, and I spent my entire career working with youth and adults, helping people transform their lives. I went back to school in 2006, and I obtained my master's degree from Lincoln University. So I have a master's in human services with a concentration in counseling. So I've been an administrator, program director, where I managed psychiatrists and master's level therapists for some years. And then I actually left practicing the counseling world and started doing personal coaching. So, and here we are today. The founder of Urban Scholar Gear. Now I design clothes, and part of the mission is with the clothes is to help people it doesn't matter where you're from. So the clothes are kind of inspiring. That's where the words urban scholar come from. It's really my story. I grew up in an urban environment, and then later on in life, I obtained my master's and became a scholar. So it's the business is just basically telling my story through clothes.
Wow. Yes. Amazing.
Yeah.
And our brand, let's face it, we wear it every day.
Yes.
So, and again, I went on recently to purchase something, and I saw different things out there. You've got hats, you've got,
Yes.
Outfits, you've got the whole thing. So, I want to let our listeners know. You can see the cap he's sporting right now, Urban Scholar. That's one of the logos that he has.
Yes.
And again, the inspirational story. So you mentioned that you grew up in an urban area, right?
Yes.
So I looked up our elementary school, Roosevelt Elementary, and I was amazed that, not in a good way, that school has like a 2-star. The kids today are below, well, on average,
Yes.
but not by much. And, back then I know, it was different. The teachers didn't have much Um, you know, we all brought our own issues to school, right?
Yes.
So I was the minority at that time,
Yes.
right? Like me and one other boy
Yeah.
was in our class. I was white. That's like the opposite of what you see, normally, right?
Yeah.
But but we were poor, and my mom was on welfare. My parents were split. I did not have a father in the picture. My mom had another child and then gave her up, so
Wow.
I didn't have a sibling. Um, all what I had been through. My mom was mentally ill, so that was another level of complexity.
Wow.
And like yourself, I rose above it. I went back to college after I was married and had my first baby. That's when I
Wow.
went back to college
Wow.
after working. And yeah, so I always had that work ethic. Like I
Yes.
didn't want to be in that situation.
Absolutely.
But when I was in high school, I didn't have the confidence, like the world and college, the whole idea of going to college. I thought I was going to fail
Yeah.
because I didn't have support growing up.
Yes.
So, and it's just amazing how you tell that story of how you went to DeVry and it was a bad experience. Tell us a little more about that.
So
what was your life like when you were young, and did you have support?
so
What was that about?
so
What was that
so
like?
growing up, I was raised in a 2-parent home. My parents were not married. Um, from my parents, my mom and dad, I have 2 older siblings, right? And I was the youngest of the 3 from my mom. And we grew up right there down the street from Roosevelt School on Redmond Street, and in a 2-family home that my father owned. We had a nice backyard with a grape tree, and I grew up right there in that block all the way up until 2003 when they sold the house. So I had both my parents, but when my parents were young, when we were very young, they were always hanging out. They like to go to the bars and stuff like that and party. So I spent a lot of time in the projects in New Brunswick. That's primarily where I grew up at. Before I came to Roosevelt, I went to Lower Sterling because that's where I grew up at in the projects. My aunt pretty much was raising us because she's my mom's older sister, and my mom was just young and still running wild up here from Mississippi. So both my parents from Mississippi, but they met here in New Brunswick, and my parents were loving in their own way. They're very old fashioned. My father didn't touch us. He wouldn't hug us. My parents never told us they loved us, but we knew they loved us based on their actions, right? And it was just one thing that stands out with me, with my dad, right? Because my mom wouldn't allow him to discipline us physically. She did that. And what happened was, whenever he would speak to us, he would always say, "You don't know nothing." And that's what stands out when I think about my dad. He always told me, "I don't know nothing." And I was just like, why is he saying all this stuff? So as I grew up, becoming a young teenager, we think we know every damn thing at 15 and 16. I was like, oh, he don't know what he's talking about. But when I became an adult and I started having my children, I had my son at 21, I started realizing my dad knew exactly what he was talking about. I didn't know nothing. And I understood his psychology behind telling me I didn't know anything, because you guys would not even, the urban scholar would not be here if it wasn't for my parents and my dad constantly telling me I don't know nothing. It actually made me want to rise above it and know something. So I spent my life,
Mm.
when I got into my senior year, I was doing terrible in high school. I got left back my freshman year. I came in with all the high classes, pre-algebra, which was the highest math at that time, 1986. I was a good student, fairly, me and my brothers and sister. And the experience at the high school in New Brunswick was a nightmare, because there were like people 18 years old in class with me, and I'm 14. I'm like, are these guys, like, are they idiots? Like, what are they doing in pre-algebra? You know what I mean? So I was like tripping out. And those wasn't the best students, right? So there was a lot of distractions going on in class, like gambling and all types of stuff. So I was distracted. And the teacher at the time loved her to death. Her English wasn't the best. And she tried her best to teach through all that stuff that was going on in class, but she never had the authority. She didn't address it. So I checked out in high school. And that freshman year, I ended up with all basic classes, ended up going to summer school every year for all the major subjects. And like, I had a lot of bad experiences in high school, but honestly, it was what shaped me. And as I reflect and I look back, I actually, that part of my life, those 4 years, I actually grown. I love it because it's what's developed me into the person that I am. Overcame a lot. There was a lot of physical stuff that happened to us going to school there. We got attacked every day. I had to overcome a lot. And I wasn't one of the popular kids. I could never play sports because my GPA was always like a 0.9 or something because I wasn't doing the work. So fast forward my senior year, my history teacher went out and there was this teacher named Mr. Voorhees that came in. And he said, put away the history books. We're going to learn some civil rights and black history. And honestly, that was a tipping point in my life. I became an A student. I went from an F student to like failing to an A student and I became that kid that everybody wanted to copy off during midterms and finals. So just his one action of switching the curriculum changed the outcomes of my life because I started learning about black history, which we were always learning about the Boston Tea Party and all these other things that wasn't related to me. I couldn't connect to it. You know what I mean? Like none of it made any sense. Like what am I learning this for? I have no connection to it. So I would sit in English class, I would sit in history, and I wouldn't do anything. I would do absolutely nothing. And every summer, my mother had to pay for summer school. And I would go there and pass, and that's how I moved forward. And I ended up graduating on time because I obtained the credits, and I ended up graduating with my class. So my senior year, I caught back up with my senior class, and I still had a low GPA. I had but they were like, we gotta get him out of here. Like he doesn't need to be left back, And I graduated on time. And still, like I said, I went to DeVry, and I had a bad experience again with my math teacher. His English wasn't great. I couldn't understand him. And some other classes, I didn't have all my books. They messed up with my books. So I was sitting in PC lab with no books for 2 weeks. And in college, 2 weeks behind is like a whole year. So I ended up dropping out because DeVry kind of it was like a disaster. Couldn't understand some of the professors, and I didn't have all the books, and nobody would like let me study with them. It was like I had this bad omen on me. Nobody wanted to help me. And I started thinking, like, what's this all about? And I said, it can't be because I'm black, because other black students are connecting with other non-black students. So I don't know what it was. So it was a good thing that happened because I left and went to work. And then I ended up becoming a mentor in like 1994. And that was my calling, helping people. And that's what I've been doing up until today,
Yeah. So that one action by Mr. Voorhees, right? And today the world is a bit different, at least what I've seen. There's a lot more opportunity for people to be themselves.
Yes.
There's a great awareness, right, of acceptance and openness, and I think it's happening, but it's slow. It's still not
Absolutely.
there, So, thank you for coming on the show, for being honest, for talking about it. It's interesting because when when we're in high school, we have all these distractions. Today, the kids have,
Oh my God.
the internet and YouTube and Snapchat. So now you said you had your first child at 21. So what is your take on parenthood? Because I know you said you wanted to talk about that.
Yes.
I have other questions I want to ask you about your, your transformation and stuff, but what about your parenting
Well,
and fatherhood in this day and age?
so based on the way that my parents raised me, I had made a resolve and a commitment that when I have children, right, I did follow the whole traditional belief of I wanted to be married when I had children. It didn't happen like that. Um, I was young, and it happened, but he saved my life. My first son saved my life because
Mm,
after high school, I had taken a turn for the worse. I actually got into the streets and started doing things I had no business doing and wasn't raised to be, but I always was around it, right? So eventually the environment kind of
mm,
got to me, right? And I became this person that every time I think about him, I'm like, how did I even become that? And that's when
mm,
my son's mother we was dating at the time and she got pregnant and I was actually in the process of studying religion, like to kind of figure out life, like, cause I wasn't fulfilled with what I was doing and I was just working, you know what I mean? And still living with my parents. And I ended up becoming Muslim while she was pregnant with my son. And I committed to studying the religion and like learning to change my ways. And I left that life alone. I walked away from it. My friends that was still involved
mm,
in the streets,
mm,
I walked away from them and I disappeared. And I went and got myself together.
mm.
So my son was born. I always say he's my savior. He saved my life because my attitude was when I do something, I do it
Mm,
wholeheartedly. I don't do half. So I said I can't have one foot in the street and another foot over here at home trying to play super dad. So I made a commitment to leave that life
mm,
alone and to change my ways and to do the right thing. And that's what I did. So, and I just committed myself to raising my son, and then fast forward, I ended up getting married when I was young because of religious, things of not wanting to commit religious, issues. Right. And I ended up getting
mhm,
married
mhm,
young, wasn't smart about it. It was more convenience. And I had two more children, two more sons. So I have a 28-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 23-year-old. So, and the 28 and the 23-year-old, they
mm,
become a year older, real soon. So those, that combination alone, and I was married at the time, it was a disaster. It was abuse going on. It was DV. Um, it was crazy. And I was trying to save everybody in the process, you know, and I wasn't the
mm,
aggressor. Um, there was DV in my home growing up. So I was
mm,
always against that when we were kids. My parents fought. They'd come home drunk and fight.
mm.
You know what I mean? Typical. To us, that was normal. We didn't see it as domestic violence. It was like, oh, did you see mom hit him upside the head with that glass bottle? You know what I mean? So it was normal for us to see that. You know what I mean?
You were just
Like me and my
laughing at
mother and sister be
it.
like, oh man, look what happened. Like they'd be like, get out of here, mind your business. So we didn't see it like DV in the 70s. Like to us, that was the norm. So, but when I got in a situation where things was like happening to me, I was like, this is not okay. You know what I mean? And as I never let anybody put their hands on me, so it didn't happen, right? But the actions were there, right? And then eventually that marriage didn't work out, and I probably needed to get counseling after that, and I didn't, right? And life goes on,
Mm,
right? And I dated after that with the whole idea of I don't know if I'm going to ever get married again. And from me dating, I had two girls in that process. So I still was like, even having structured religion in my life, I started drifting off because I was making bad decisions. because growing up, we didn't really have a lot of supervision at home because my parents were always out. So I didn't have like this model of what I should be doing. I was always making my own decisions, even as a teenager. We had the freedom to do whatever we want. You know what I mean? So there was never no mentoring going on. I never had a mentor. I just had examples that I lived with. You know, I don't know if you understand that. So, and our parents didn't get involved in our education and stuff like that. They just said, y'all know what y'all supposed to do, you know, because they wasn't educated. They never finished high school. I don't think my father ever got out of elementary school. So, because they had to work. He had to work in his time. So life was different. And I don't know much about their history because they didn't talk about it. So there was a serious disconnect from my parents' upbringing. I never knew my grandfathers on each side. They both were deceased. And my mom and dad didn't really talk about them. So, but for me, I wanted to make sure I was a loving father. And that's who I am. I put my everything into my children. I'm a workaholic. I've been working since I was 14 because that's the example that was set in my home. You work and you take care of your family. So I've always done that, whether they were physically here or not. You know what I mean? So, and my children have been through a lot as a result of the decisions me and their parents have made. You know what I mean? So, and that's where the resilience comes in at, because I have to be okay. I have to be okay for them. They have to see that. You know what I mean? They have to experience it. They have to know what it looks like. They have to be able to identify it. So that was important for me. So that's why when you go online and you see me, I'm being myself. That's who I am every day. You know, I've always been this urban scholar. I'm just now letting him out, you know?
Wow. So wait a minute. So you went from hanging out in the projects when you were young, you started out in pre-algebra. That's pretty good, you know? That showed that you had the intelligence, you had the skill, but then you had your freedom, a little bit too much of your freedom, and you did what any normal person would do, right? You lived, right? You lived it, and you know, something you said about your you know, you lived by the examples that you saw in your house. And so one of the things on my last show, we talked about being there for the kids of today, right? They need a softer path, right? They need to know that it's okay to talk about their feelings. And, you know, you said your parents didn't, you know, talk about their upbringing or their history and stuff. So, you know, I make it a point to talk to my kids, not like, oh, we walked like 2 miles in the snow uphill to school every day, you know, not like that, but like things that I went through. They're like, Mom, I feel so bad for you. And, you know, because we had the domestic violence also in my house. I went to a women's shelter with my mom because, you know, she accused my dad of pulling a gun on her and all this. It was, you know, there was a lot. And, you know, it happens. It doesn't matter your race, your color, your sexuality. It doesn't matter. Like, we all have a situation and we have to get through it. So your example, you know, you found religion, you wanted to do what you thought was right and you knew was right by getting married, and turned out it wasn't the best situation. And then to see, fast forwarding years later, you know, here you are, and you have that awareness, and you're being honest with yourself. You're able to recognize, hey, you know what, I did some things, and now you're able to influence your kids' lives. And I know that is important because you're there and you're present, you know? So thank you. It's awesome. And again, as a man, you know, some men want to be macho. They want to be you know, they're all that. And they don't talk about their feelings. They don't talk about it. Right. So that's something that is is so
Yes.
important.
Yes. That's why I always make it a habit to tell them I love them, because it's the truth. And my siblings and I didn't have that. We knew it. We knew in our heart our parents loved us, but we never heard it. We never heard it. We just never heard it. You know, and I can't do that to my children. Um, I feel like our generation is the last of a dying breed. Like, our resolve is on a level that is incomprehensible, because the stuff that we saw and had to overcome. You know what I mean? So for some of us like yourself, like, I commend you. I'm so proud of you, and like, I'm a visual person, so when I look at you, I think back to elementary school, and I was in a conversation. I don't know if you remember Jamaz. I don't know if you remember him. He was also at Roosevelt School, and Jamaz Arrington. And I was trying to explain to him who you were, and I was showing him pictures. Like, I don't remember her, because me and him were he was a knucklehead. You know what I mean? And we were just talking, but just like thinking back, and I said, she was quiet. She didn't really bother people. She minded her business. But like, having the insight that I do now, like, I'm listening to what you're saying that you went through, and I'm like, now it makes sense that you were resolved, like, reserved like that, and I can kind of see that what you're saying. I can replay in my head your effect that you had back then. You know what I mean? So it makes sense. But I commend you for that. I'm really proud of you. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Well, it goes both ways. In our class, I remember a few people that stick out. Some I don't remember their names, right? Because we're talking how many, like 40 years ago?
That was a long time ago.
Like a long
Yeah,
time
the 80s,
ago.
late 80s. Yes, we're getting there.
Yes. And so I had a few girls. Well, it was Ramona, Anissa, and myself. We were the BBB club, because all our names were with B, our last names. And, we connected. One night I was over at Ramona's house, and there was a incident that happened, and they called her house and they said, "Don't come home." And I was like, "What?" Well, you know us. We run out the door. We're going home. We're going to see what's going on. And there was a woman who got murdered upstairs in the apartments. Wow. And we had the same shared entryway. And as they're rolling out the gurney with the body on it, I'm just like, is that my mom? Because it could have very well been my mom.
Yeah.
It was like, but to me, this was like normal. And here I am, like, playing at my friend's house, and I look and it wasn't my mom, So that was like a dose of reality after everything else. That was like another level, because I would walk to school. My mom had enrolled me in the wrong elementary school. So I was walking down past French Street and I don't know the name of that school.
Was it Washington?
But when I was in first grade, I don't remember. I'll have to look it up. I have to go back.
It's either Washington or Lincoln.
But Lincoln, I think it was Lincoln. But she had me going to the wrong school, walking like 10 blocks, 12 blocks, the city streets, right, with the people pissing in the alleyways, the drugs.
That was crazy back then.
Fighting. A man came out with a hammer after the woman, and here I am walking to school.
Wow.
Like, what am I doing there, right? So anyhow, so that's a picture, but yeah. And then when I went to Roosevelt, which was just because I lived on Livingston Avenue by like Remsen kind of, we rented an apartment in the housing there, and it was interesting because I thought like, okay, now I'm in the right place. Now I'm going to be in my class with, and I made some connections, but not all
Yeah,
connections, just because, I don't know, because I was white, because I was different, because I was
yeah,
quiet. I didn't, I would go and sit on the blacktop at recess. I wouldn't play. We had a blacktop
yeah,
playground, and we,
mhm,
it was different.
yeah.
But my situation, so my dysfunction continued, and I wrote a book. I'm going to put
Okay.
it out. Um, but when I got with my husband, he helped me to get on a better path of
Yeah.
normalcy, right? And by being in a different environment, that's what helped me. Um, and my situation of going to college at a later age and acing everything, right? I was like, wow, I could have
Yes.
done
Yeah.
this.
Me
Like,
too.
it was so.
Oh man.
So what do you say now to our listeners, right? People who may be in a situation and they don't feel like they can do it, or they know somebody. What do you say to them?
I'm gonna say this because that's part of my mission is to let everyone know. Doesn't matter who you are, where you from, where you grew up. You can be and do anything you want. I didn't grow up to. My dreams wasn't to be a designer, a famous designer. My dreams wasn't to be a mentor or a therapist, right? I didn't grow up wanting to be those things. I wanted to be the guy in the back of the fire truck that was in the back steering it because I thought that was cool, right? But I never went in that direction. So what I say to people is, even in high school, because I was at the bottom of the class, people thought I was dumb. You know what I mean? They just assumed that. So graduating at the bottom 5% of the class, and now fast forward being at the top 5%, life is good, right? So I had the same experience you had. So I don't have a bachelor's degree. I don't know if you caught on to that. I just have a high school diploma and my master's. I was able to bypass my bachelor's based on my work experience in history. That accounted for me being qualified for that master's program, which no longer exists at Lincoln University, which is, the first historically black university, contrary to what people think. We are number one. So I entered that program, right? And that was the first time, Alicia, that I've ever had passing grades in my life. Well, since high school, right? Because my elementary school, I was great. I was fine. I didn't need help, none of that kind of stuff. But going through high school, I always had D's and F's and maybe some C's, I don't know. And then towards the end, I started mastering, whatever was being taught in history and stuff like that. I got A's and stuff. But to have a 3.2 GPA was unheard of, right? So if this little guy from Brunswick, two parents born and raised in Mississippi with no education, can obtain his master's degree at the age of, I went back to school in 2006, so I might have been like 34, 35. And I had already had 5 kids. I did it full time and worked and still stayed in my kids' lives, right? So I say all that to say is it's real simple. There's nothing special about me. I made a decision. It's really that simple. I made a decision that I'm going to write the story of my life. I'm going to write how it finishes. I don't care what anybody think about me. It never did. I don't have low self-esteem. Never did. I come from a healthy home. My parents, put us in us what we needed. We never struggled with our identity, our self-esteem. And I thank God for that. Right. So I never lived my life worried about what other people thought about me. Right. So I've always lived out who I wanted to be at whatever stage I was in. So it's just, I found this stage and I found it to be the most enjoyable. So there's nothing special. It was a decision. You have to make a decision. And once you make a decision, then all the faculties and energy and forces in your body and your mind and brain, they'll submit. You just have to make that decision, and you have to create a plan of action and go after what it is you want. And you have to stick to it every day. It's called simple discipline. It's something that's very underestimated. Simple discipline will help you to obtain anything you want. You just have to follow the format. So even when I graduated grad school, we had to do a thesis, right? So I did my thesis on gang violence. And I crashed that last semester because we had, what do you call those drives where you put all your information in? My jump drive, whatever, got destroyed. It got corrupted. And that was my final stuff for my thesis. And I couldn't recover all of it. And I remember crying. I hadn't cried in years. And I went to one of my professors and he looked at me and said, "That's not my problem." I said, "Whoa." So I was like, I'm not going to graduate. So he says, "I'm going to give you an extension." He said, "But in the master's program, a C is like a F. So he's like, if that's what you want to do." I said, "Listen, I'm just telling you what happened. I didn't plan this." Right. So I ended up finishing it. Long story short, when I defended my thesis on gang violence, I had no idea. They gave us this format on how to defend your thesis, right? And, here I am. I don't know nothing about college. This is my first time in college, like since DeVry. DeVry was just a technical school, so it's not the same. And they gave us this format, and I did my best. I followed the format, and I presented, and I defended my thesis. And the people that I presented to at the end, when I stopped, it says, "We absolutely have no questions, and this has never happened." They said, "You hit every point. This has never happened before." He's like, "We're speechless. You answered. We didn't even write down anything because you had us so captured. Like you hit everything. Boom, 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 boom." He said, "No one's ever done that." So that was my exit from college. I came out like that. So I had to embrace who I was, Alicia. I'm a scholar. Right? And I'm proud of that. So I show it through my clothes now. And I brag about it. I brag different. It's not I'm not being arrogant. None of that. This is really who I am. This is me. 5 years in. That's who I am. And I'm just living my life through my clothing brand, through my music label, Urban Scholar Music Group, the clothing brand, Urban Scholar Gear. My foundation, my academy will be coming up next, Urban Scholar Academy. We're going to be doing some real serious things in the community. We're going to change the landscape across the country and across the world. We're going to do some things.
Wonderful. So everyone listening, he said it. It's simple. You make a decision. One of the things that I have in my book, Emotional Strength Explained, I have to talk about it because it's so relevant. Every interview that I do, people bring up what is in here. I have a section here. It says, face yourself.
Yeah.
I can't really see it, but when you get, a little more than halfway through this self-help book, it says, be brave enough to face yourself, decide. You've already identified who you are and you've come up with some solutions. Now it's time to face yourself and decide. So I invite people to take this simple approach to go through what many of us have lived through and learned the hard way, right? We've gone through, made mistakes. We've found what works. Joe, the fact that you were so brave to go back and go after your master's, like that's, and even not having gone through college before that for the bachelor's, like, that's just amazing because that's a lot of work and at a high level. And, he can do it with 5 kids, it's possible. And the fact that, we came from a place that was not ideal without support in areas that we needed, right? We came out under disadvantage, I guess you say, right? And so now we haven't even talked about it. Your music, Urban Scholar Music, and then what is this I hear? Urban Scholar
So
University.
I my the, I don't want to call it the completion because my real passion is motivational speaking, is coaching, right? It's helping people and talking to people. So that's my real passion. Like if I had to choose how I was going to live my life, and I would be out speaking every day somewhere. Like that's who I am. So Urban Scholar Academy has been something that I always wanted to create, and it's multifaceted. So, but initially, what we're probably going to do when we launch Urban Scholar Academy, we want to focus on the scholarship area because I want to focus on helping kids develop and become who they need to be, and provide them with guidance that I didn't have going through the school system here because the guidance counselors didn't help me and they didn't help my friends either. So we were on our own trying to figure out life. So the academy will help them with that and provide them with scholarships. I'm working with someone in the community now on that. And I also want to focus on certain sports, right? That, African American kids are not like, we're not playing baseball anymore. Like, and I want to focus in that area, right? And I want to create a center, the Urban Scholar Center in the community and across the country to where they can come there and they can get guidance, right? They can get counseling, and they can get their physical, training and stuff like that, and it'd be sports oriented. So it's kind of like a whole wholesome environment where you could come there and get counseling, coaching. I'll call it coaching, right? You can come there and play sports, right? And also I want to create some classes or like some classes focused on obviously math, um, English, and philosophy, right? To help kids develop their thinking, to learn critical thinking, right? To also stay current with the changes in the world and what's going on to help shape the minds of the kids. And that I feel like the higher education is not doing. So I want to kind of be like I want to have a multifaceted impact on the community, and I want this thing to grow. And like I said, and I'm calling it an academy because I want to have a part where there's an institute where you can actually come to school. The Urban Scholar Institute. It's going to be a break off from that, where we and it'll be a whole curriculum. You know what I mean? It'll be something as a supplement, to education. If you want to put your kid there, it'll be there, and hopefully we can get the funding we need, and we won't have to charge people. You know what I mean? It'll be free. You just have to meet a certain criteria. So we want to do it. It's a lot. It's a lot, but it's not a lot for us.
You said something amazing. It sounds like it's such a perfect fit, for the kids coming up in certain environments in urban areas. I know that there's opportunities out there, but they may not have that confidence. They might not really be ready. And so to bridge that gap, for example, I went to school at a community college, and there was a couple different locations, and one of them was in Trenton, and that's also a city area. And I said, I'll go there. That's fine. The class was a good time for me, so I would go. And the kids in my class were from that area. They went to that campus, and in English, the professor, this white lady, she talked and said what she wanted us to do, and I get writing. We were writing on paper, on paper, right, back in the early 2000s. So we're writing, and the girl next to me, she's like looking over my shoulder, like, what is this girl writing? So she didn't understand it. So I spent 5 minutes with her, and she's like, yeah, you know what? You can help me. I'm going to bring it. I'm going to write up tonight, and I'm going to bring it tomorrow, and you look at it for me. So I reviewed it. She had a few changes to make, but it was all like general stuff that she could do. And if she made those changes, she'd be on her own. So, stuff like that would be really helpful to people. And I saw her in a shoe store. It does. Late, I saw that girl in a shoe store, like 5 years later, and she's like, "Hey, you helped me. I graduated."
Wow.
She
Wow.
remembered me, because I helped
Wow.
her. And that was cool. That was
Amazing.
really cool because I was older than them, and at the same time, I had more knowledge, I guess,
Yeah.
about English anyway, not math. I can't do
Yeah, not my
math.
thing.
Get it, but it's true, and the fact that we know what they've been through, whether it's violence in the home, outside of the home, whether it's the peer pressure of doing what they see, maybe even what their
Yeah.
siblings have been through, right? How many kids have their older brothers and sisters
Yeah.
getting into stuff, doing things, and it's so amazing. So Urban Scholar music, is that happening
Yeah.
now,
So Urban Scholar Music
Joe?
Group is a full record label entertainment company where we provide management and publishing and whatever artists need. So it's been something that I've always been a part of. I had another company called High Definition Entertainment, and basically the brainchild behind my labels is my son. He's an artist. Um, he's an urban scholar in his own right. He taught himself how to write, mix, produce everything. He does everything in home, and he's like on all platforms. So he's my brainchild in terms of he's the reason why I started Urban Scholar Music Group, because he pushed me to transition the company to that. And I work closely with him. And we got a new project that's going to be dropping July 15th. Um, and he's on all platforms, Young Yefe. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm proud of him. He makes money off his music. He handles his own publishing. He does everything in house. He's independent, and we work together. To keep this thing going. And he's an ambassador for Urban Scholar Gear, so he represents the brand. So both the companies are married together. So any artists that we sign or we work with, they automatically become brand ambassadors for Urban Scholar Gear. It's part of the package. So
Nice, nice. Now, do they have to be enrolled in school?
do they have to be what?
I'm just playing. And I was saying, if they're doing music, do they have to be enrolled in school?
Nah,
I'm just playing.
nah.
So, well, I know I have one of my son is 14 going on 15, and he has a friend, and all he
Oh
does is
wow,
beats. He's like doing music. He got picked up for a
wow.
commercial. So I'm going to
Yeah,
send
yeah,
him your
definitely.
way.
Tell
I'm
them
going to
check me
send
out
him
on
your way.
Instagram. Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
Urban
On
Scholar.
Instagram, it's Urban Scholar Gear and Urban Scholar Music Group.
Okay.
Real simple. Yeah.
All right. All right. So, all right. So, listeners, Joe Spencer, we have Urban Scholar. He's a life coach. He does counseling. He does
That's
speaking
right.
engagements. Joe, what's the best way for people to get in touch with
You can
you?
catch me. You can go to our website, urbanscholargear.com. You can also catch us you could Google us, Urban Scholar Gear. We have a profile there. You can also catch us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's Urban Scholar. You type in Urban Scholar, you'll find us. We're all over. We're all over the place. And the email is urbanscholargear@gmail.com.
Wonderful. All right. So Joe, I know I've enjoyed talking with you. I think our listeners definitely
Yes.
will enjoy this too, because it's something that is just, it's so amazing to hear the stories and get inspiration
Yes.
through that, and hear all the ways that we can be resilient. So just remember, everyone, make a
That's right.
decision. It's that simple. Don't overcomplicate it. all this extra stuff is there, but you don't have to focus on it. Joe,
And
anything else you want to
so, if any
share
of
with the
your listeners
listeners?
want some coaching, um, I only take on a certain amount of clients because it takes a lot of energy. So I have a criteria that you have to be at that point where you're ready to decide. I don't. You can't be in doubt or confused about what you want to do because that's not my piece. You have to come to me already with the decision that you're ready. Because I only work with people who are ready. Because that's kind of where I'm at. Because this stuff takes a lot of time and energy, and I can guarantee that your blueprint. I have a program called the Blueprint for Success. It's like a 10-year plan. That's what I put people on. I help them create the next 10 years of their life. Right? Nobody's doing that. And I guarantee you that
Mm.
if you follow your own blueprint, you will be successful because that's how I was able to accomplish everything that I have in my past and currently doing and in the future. It's all in my blueprint for success.
Mm. So, coaching, the criteria is you have to be ready. Joe's blueprint for success is a 10-year plan, and you can learn from his experience that it works. If you're in a relationship that you're not happy with, if you're in a career, a job that you're not happy
Hmm.
with, if you are just looking for more out of life, right? You got to be motivated, and you
Absolutely.
can do this, right? Joe can help you. Um, if you are into music, Urban Scholar Music on Instagram, um, and let's not forget Urban Scholar
Yes.
Academy. That's amazing. That's definitely something we're gonna look into. When you get
Yes.
closer to that, let me
We'll,
know, and we'll have
we
you back
we
on
would
the
love
show
that.
again, Joe. That's something we would definitely love
Absolutely.
to promote.
Absolutely. I will definitely let you know soon everything's
All
done.
right. Well, wonderful. All right, Joe. Well, thank you again. I know I enjoyed speaking with
Yes.
you. Nice
Yes.
catching up after all these years as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Likewise. It was great seeing
Thank
you.
you.
And let's keep in touch, Definitely.
Sounds good.